Okay, we're back again. I'm back with Nigel. We've got another presentation to do, haven't we?
We certainly have. Hello, everyone.
It's only taken about, I don't know, half an hour to get here, but never mind. We're here.
It certainly has.
So do you want to explain what we're going to be looking at then, and then I'll put it on?
Okay.
So what's the presentation then?
We're looking at One World, Two Civilizations.
Okay, I'm just going to get that up now.
Okay.
No, there we go. I've got the presentation up now.
Okay, One World, Two Civilizations. These photos, they're not in any particular order. They're just random pictures with loads of questions. So, shall we get into it, Karen?
Well then.
All right, the first picture. Who built these? This building is it's called the Duomo, D-U-O-M-O, in Italy, and it's one of my favorite buildings. I think it's absolutely stunning. Look at the size of the doors compared to the size of the people. We couldn't build this today. We don't have the technology to build this, and even if we had the technology, can you imagine, Karen, how much something like that would cost to build today?
The only thing that strikes me is that it's far more advanced than we can imagine, but on the other hand, it's not. It's not like they're like spacey like or that modern. They're quite old looking, aren't they? Even though they're amazing.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting how many little peaks there are, little pointy bits on the top, which I think we all know now that they were for energy. They were energy gathering, free energy gathering devices. I mean, there's just loads of them. But yeah, I just think it's, you look at the size of it, it's huge. And as I say, how much would something like that cost to build today? You couldn't put a price on it. Who owns it? Who does it belong to?
The churches.
Yeah, probably.
I've just shown you Stan Smith's work, haven't I? What they really were.
Yeah.
These people were looking at the sky.
Yeah. All right, so let's go on to slide number 3. The size of the doors compared to the size of the people. Again, just crazy, insane.
Yeah, aren't they?
Yeah, I don't know what that...
How do we not know that these weren't housing Zeppelins or something?
Yeah, we don't. But I mean, look at that dude on the left of the picture, and that fresco kind of thing. He's kind of just about the same height as the door. In fact, he looks a little bit taller than the one that he's next to. I mean, who were these people?
No, but I don't think they were as tall as that, though. By the way, I still think that we didn't get much to about more than 7-8 foot tall.
Well, there's different information coming from different sources, but it's all so convoluted. We just haven't got a clue what's the truth. Now, the next slide, number 4, big rifles. I mean, are they real? Who knows? Who knows? Again, another big door on the right. Funny how there's so many birds in the background. With that behind that guy with the 2 rifles. But anyway, next one. Again, we've got big doors. We've got what appear on the right to be another set of big doors. And then in the middle, we've got this huge person with a child. Clearly bigger than the arches to her left. No idea where it is. The next one shows, we're on slide 6 now. The next one shows a big guy, putting his head or his hand on the head of a regular sized guy. And the regular sized guy seems to have a beard, so he's clearly not a child. And then again, on the right, more big doors. Next one, we're showing the cone heads. They're saying skeptics argue that the skulls are just another internal cranial deformation as seen in South American tribes. I don't believe that for a minute. I don't believe that for a minute. So we've got Inca, we've got Egyptian, and obviously there's one that's being intentional on the bottom right. But you know, these have been found Peru, Egypt, all over the place. Who were they?
That is the question.
Sorry?
That is the question.
Yeah. All right, so let's look at the next slide. Okay, I made this a while ago. I'll try and find this link if it's still up, and we'll put it in the description. The pictures I've enclosed are all taken from Noel Faye's video called Forbidden Fruit. This is number 1 in a playlist. The pictures are all from the 1700s, or shall I say I or J 1700. The smaller people are not children. Okay, and there's the link. I'll check that that's still working, and we'll put it in the show notes. So these are basically screenshots. We're on slide number 9, and again you can see big people, you can see smaller people. Obviously, this is a drawing; it's not a photograph. But again, I just think it's a good example of showing the larger people quite happily living alongside the smaller people and vice versa.
You don't know whether the smaller people are dwarf people.
No, but there's a lot of them, you know. And people argue that some of them are kids, but you'll see as we move on that that's not quite so. So the next one again, you've got like looks to be like a couple standing close to what looks like a bar, and then in front of them you've got one really really small person who's quite possibly a child. But again, when you look at the size of that child compared to the size of the big people, crazy, absolutely crazy. What do you think, Karen?
I don't know.
Right. These are all from the same picture, basically. As you can see, the tall guy is.
Which one are we on? Number 10?
No, we're on. Sorry, number 11. My apologies. But again, it appears to be the same tall guy as in the previous pictures. Who knows which ones are children, which ones are adults? But again, it just shows bigger people. Slide number 12, this next one again. I don't think the two people at the bottom in the foreground are children by the way they're dressed. One of them seems to have a cane, and behind them are clearly two much larger people. What's going on upstairs, I have got no idea. But it doesn't look, well, it looks kind of weird. What do you think?
I don't know, I'm just looking at the pictures with you.
Okay. I just wondered if you had any thoughts.
Well, I said maybe those are more dwarf people, but they're all in proportions. I don't know.
Well, the next slide's quite interesting. We got some big people on horses. And, you know, again, when you look at the size of those people, were the horses huge as well? I mean, were the horses in proportion to the big people, or were they just normal sized horses?
They could have drawn them big because they had authority.
Yeah, that's a possibility. That's a possibility. Again, you know, it's open to everyone's interpretation. But again, you've got these, you know, big people on horses, and you've got these, by comparison, a load of relatively small people. Now, this next slide's quite interesting. This is slide number 14. Clearly, we have two sizes of people in this picture. Again, what that one at the bottom in the foreground is wearing, I have got no idea. But again, big people and smaller people, and where they are, what they're looking at, no idea. Again, it's a drawing, but, you know, is it from someone's imagination? I don't think so. I don't think so. This next one's quite interesting. This is, we're on 15 now. Is that a child? Could be, but look at the size of the guy to the right. You can only just see half of him. Compare that to what we might say would be a regular sized guy next to the child. Clearly two different sizes of people. Now, I'm not saying these were giants, but compared to us, you know, these guys were probably 7.5, 8 feet tall. And that seems to be quite common all over the world. The next one's slide 16. The next one is kind of a repeat of two back, but now we've got another person in the drawing or in the picture. But again, if you look at the two guys in the foreground on the left, one of them's got looks like to be a rifle over his shoulder. And these guys clearly bigger than, much bigger than the other figures that you can see.
What number are we on?
16.
Oh, sorry, I've moved it along. I thought we were on. Oh, right, okay. Well, I've moved it on a bit, but anyway, there you go. We're back on that one. Yeah, he's got a rifle on his shoulder. There you go. Much bigger than. Okay. A little bit head then. Sorry.
Okay. I'm not gonna read out what's on this next slide, but people can read it for themselves. But it says not a child. She has. Well, you can see that she's not a child. And again, you know, she seems to be the only small person in amongst 8 or 9 much taller people.
Yeah.
The next slide's not a particularly good one, but again, you know, these are all pretty much screenshots. And again, you can just see the two different sizes of people. And again, the small people.
In proportion. They're all in proportion, aren't they? Whereas people who are tall today, they're not in proportion and they can hardly walk.
Yeah. You can clearly see that the guy in the foreground, I can't even make out it's two people. I can only see one head, but, you know, clearly not a child. Clearly not a child. And, you know, you kind of think that on a picture like that, the person in the foreground would appear to be taller than the people in the background. And this is just the complete opposite.
What number are we on, Nigel?
We're on 18.
Right, I'm on 19.
Okay, I'll go back.
Sorry, I missed one. Sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. It's okay. So yeah, you can clearly see those 5 people in the background, and a short dude in the foreground who's clearly not a child. So again, just two different sizes of humans, and they all appeared to have been wiped out very recently.
Tell me when you're moving on, then I'll move on.
Okay, moving on. Next one. These are allegedly depictions of skeletons that have been found on every continent. Various sizes, from 7 foot up to 25'6", if we can believe what they're telling us here. I mean, who really knows? We don't. You know, there's plenty of pictures on the internet with so-called unearthed giant skeletons, but how many of them are true? We just don't know. We can't trust anything anymore. We can't believe anything that we see anymore, unless we see it with our own eyes. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Again, you've got one really tall dude who's clearly 18 inches, 2 feet taller than the other people.
Where? We're on 21, yeah? Oh,
no,
so I've missed one.
20. You missed one again.
I've missed one, yeah. I've missed one.
Slide 20.
Number 20. Sorry, I missed one by accident. Sorry, everybody.
What? It's difficult for the guys listening. We seem to have a problem screen sharing, so we kind of got to do it this way. It's a bit of a pain, but I'm sure we'll fix it one day.
He's got his hand in his jacket as well.
Yeah. I mean, we you know, the hidden hand. That's why I say, who knows? We don't know what we can believe anymore. But you know, again, it's an interesting picture. Moving on to the next one. Again, there's not a lot of obvious different sized people in this one, but the guys in that little crowd to the right do appear to be a little bit bigger than the little guy in the foreground. So again, and the guy on the left appears to be exactly the same height as the 5 people on the right. So again, these are drawings, who knows? Right, let's move on to the next one. We're on 22 now. You can see you have got little people. We're looking at the kind of towards the bottom on the right. You've got 2 little guys that clearly got rifles over the shoulder, and just kind of to the left and in front of them, you've got a much taller guy with a rifle. So I put this one in because clearly those 2 people in the foreground with rifles, again, they're not children. They're not children because they wouldn't be carrying rifles. The 2 at the bottom, they could be kids. We don't know. We've got no idea. But again, you've got 3 guys there on the right-hand side, 2 little guys and a much taller guy that have all got rifles. Okay, so let's get into some pictures. The next slide, 23, this is a photograph. Again, these are clearly Tartarians. They are dark skinned and much taller than the surrounding people. I think it's actually a duplicate. I think it's like it's the same picture side by side, essentially. That's not 2 tall guys, but again, much taller than the people surrounding them.
I must say, he looks quite, the one that's put his hand out looks quite small, doesn't he?
Yeah, but if you look at you can clearly see it a little bit clearer on the left. The guy that he's putting his hand out to seems to be, I don't know, is that a policeman? I mean, he's clearly got a helmet on and he's wearing some kind of uniform.
He could be a small person.
Yeah, he could be, but then there's clearly a child in the background, so standing on something.
Well, he's standing next to a child. I don't know if it's, I don't know about that. Excuse me. They all look like children except the man with putting his hand out. He could be a small person. Yeah,
granted, they could be dwarves. We don't know, but you know, we've got what we've got. If that makes sense, we've only got the pictures that we've got. We don't know if they're doctored. We don't know if they're photoshopped. We don't know anything. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide.
24, yeah?
Yeah. So we're talking about, or touching on the mud flood theory. It's not a conspiracy. Something happened very recently. Now, I made this PPT a while ago. I should have changed this. Within the last 500 years, no, within the last 200 years, or maybe even less than that, a whole civilization was wiped out. And there's no doubt in any of us, in any of our minds now, that this civilization was worldwide and was quite possibly Tartaria, or as far as we know, it was Tartaria. Now, I'm going to go down another little rabbit hole just for a minute. The next slide, which is 25, is talking about the letter G. Now, look at how this letter G is depicted. We would, when we were at school, we never learned to write the G like this. We learned to write the capital G and the small g, but we never actually were taught or learned to write the letter G like this. Okay, next slide, 26. This style of G. There is evidence to show that this style of the letter G is the G in Freemasonry. Represents the serpent. Look how many kings, presidents, and folklore stories have a George. George, and that's been followed through during this Lyris nonsense as well. Remember Mr. Floyd? So let's just go with the flow for a minute. Next slide, population. According to official sources, now official sources really and truly is Wikipedia. And we know all about them. But the population of the Earth in 1900 was 1.564 billion people. Now, let's just go with the maths here for a minute. 1.5 billion people would kind of be 750 million couples, if you follow my logic. So if there are 7 billion in the world today, then that means in 119 years, basically no one has died and we've all got 10 kids. And you see the silly logic in that.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Next slide. The following images are from, again, a lot of these are screenshots from Rebel Without a Pause channel. Again, the link's there. I'll make sure it's still active, and if so, we'll put it in the description below. So what are we looking at in the next slide? We're looking at the European Parliament as opposed to, or when compared to what we taught is the Tower of Babel or the Tower of Babel. Very, very strange way to construct a European Parliament building, wouldn't you say? Kind of looks, unfinished. Very, very strange. Okay, so what we're looking at here, if you can see at the top of that slide, it says True Earth, mud.
Wait a minute, are we on to the next one now?
No, we're still on the European Parliament one.
Right.
It says across the top, True Earth, mud, missing architects, missing adults, and lots of orphan trains, which again is all connected. So if we go on
to the 1800s.
Yeah. So if we go on to the next slide, number 30, talking about a place called Wanderville, which I thought was very interesting. And it says the orphan trains were a series of social service programs that relocated poor and homeless children from 1854 to 1929. Very, very interesting dates there. More than 200,000 children traveled by train from the east to new homes in nearly every state in the continental United States. So they what they're admitting here is that they basically almost repopulated the United States with children. What happened to all the parents? 200,000 kids. You can't tell me that between 1854 and 1929, there were 200,000 unwanted children? No, that makes sense. Next slide. Do you remember this guy, Mr. Bumble, Oliver Twist?
Star, I want some more.
Yeah, please, sir, can I have some more? 1837 to 1839. It's a very, very old story. Were we being told something? Because that was all about orphanages. Right, moving on, next slide. Orphanages and workhouses. Now, there were literally thousands of them throughout Europe and America during the 1800s. According to what we've researched, there were literally thousands of them, both orphanages and workhouses, where these kids were basically put to work. Thousands of them, no exaggeration. If you go to the next slide, this is an internet image. How many workhouses were there in England?
That's what they're telling us, isn't it? It may not have
Well,
been
that's what they're telling us.
but
That's what they're telling us. Yeah.
They don't tell us the truth, though, do they?
No, they don't. No, they don't. Again, we've got to use our own discernment, but it's basically saying that there were more than 1,800 with a total capacity of more than 90,000 places. 90 in little old England and Wales? 1,800. That is just insane. Workhouses. These aren't orphanages. These are just workhouses.
But supposedly, the churches or places like that took the children when women didn't want their children. They used to give their children over.
I don't believe that 200,000 women gave up their child. No, these people, the parents were, well, something happened to the parents and the kids were taken away, so they could be re-educated, so they could be programmed, so they could be taught all the indoctrination that we all know about. But we're all beginning to learn now, beginning to find out. Next couple of slides, we're going to show just typical mud-flood buildings, which, again, we won't dwell on this too much because we've all been down this rabbit hole. On the next slide, Karen, we're on 35. I put there are hundreds of these in London, but you know that. You've been there, you've made videos on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Next slide, entrance on the second floor. Okay, just for those in the UK, that would be the first floor, because in America and Europe and certainly here in China, the ground floor is the first floor. Don't have a ground floor. So where it says entrance on the second floor, for those in the UK, that would be entrance on the first floor, but you get my meaning. Next slide is the Carnegie. See how I've spelled the word library? I made this more, well, a long time ago. The Carnegie Library in Bradford. Look at the size of the door, the entrance, and clearly mud flood because you've got the street level windows.
The windows above are quite big, aren't they?
But yeah, another word with lie in it, library. Yeah, and again, the next slide just shows you another shot of the same building, which is clearly a mud flood, a mud flooder, as Martin would say. So we move on to the next slide, and I've just put all of these mud flood buildings appear to be used as libraries. Yes, I know it's spelt wrong deliberately. Town halls, theatres, and government buildings. What were they before? What was their use before the mud flood? We have no idea. The next slide, you got an arrow pointing at the windows. I put this one up because look at the windows in relation to what we're told is the front door. That front door was clearly not where it is now.
That front door is halfway through a floor.
Yeah. I think that front door is, I wouldn't say it's been created. It could have been created, but it certainly wasn't a front door before the mud flood. No way. And you've got some railings there and obviously a ramp or whatever going up from the street up to the front door. But again, it was just highlighting the low-level windows that have got metal balustrade around them. And, clearly this building was not built at that level. And there's people out there that say, oh, maybe the building sank. Well, my only argument on that would be that the buildings are still square and level. If they sank, they'd all be like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, in my opinion. So this was definitely some kind of flood, definitely some kind of mud flood. Now, the next slide, I'm introducing a building. It's called the Grand International Hotel in Barcelona. Now, if you go onto Wikipedia and type in the Grand International Grand International Hotel in Barcelona, you will read that the official story is that it was constructed in 53 days. 53 days. 53 days to build a hotel. Let's have a look at it. There you go. There you go. Slide 42. They knocked that little baby up in 53 days. Can you believe that?
I missed one word, but we're going back to that one. Yeah. Amazing building.
53 days. Can you see it?
Yeah.
53 days to knock that little baby up. What do you reckon?
The trees aren't very big.
No, they're not. They're not. So they were clearly planted, after or at a much more recent time. But yeah, they're telling us that they constructed that in 53 days. Now you can do your own internet search for it, and you'll come up with the same. But that's the official story. The official narrative is that they built it in 53 days. Now I was involved in construction in Australia for many years, and they couldn't even have made or prepared any of the windows and so on and so forth. The glass couldn't have been made in that amount of time. So clearly the whole thing is just a complete mockery. But again, the next slide, I'm kind of being sarcastic, but it still has a serious connotation. People blindly believe what they're told. You can kind of hear them now. 53 days, really? Wow, that's amazing. The fact is that a master builder with a workforce of 100,000 men could not
together like Lego.
Yeah. But people will believe it. You can hear, wow. Can you imagine having a guided tour of that place and the tour guide going, this was all built in like 53 days. And people would be going, oh my God, that's amazing. That's incredible. You couldn't, a master builder with 100,000 workers, 100,000 guys could not knock that up in 53 days. It's absolutely physically impossible. So again, just another deception. Next slide. Our civilization did not build this. These buildings are not only on every continent, but in every country. We did not build these structures. We could not build them today. And according to my own research and that of other people, they were healing centers, some kind of healing center. Now, I think you've got that other PPT that we're going to do a follow-up on, which is architecture. And we'll go into that. I'll go into that in a bit more detail. But for this one, I just want to let people have a taste for where we're going. So next slide. You're looking at an organ. This is what today would be called a church or a cathedral. Again, look at the size of the door in the background compared to the people.
We're looking at the organ. We've gone up for another. We're on 48, are we now?
No, we're on 45. You've gone racing ahead.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I must have missed. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. There you go. We're back to that one. Oh, I don't know what's going on. Sorry.
Right, yeah, we're on 45 with the big organ. And of course, we're expected to believe that these organs were just built as part of the church, and they're just there to, you know, help people sing songs. Yeah, which of course is complete and utter nonsense when you get into it. Okay, so next slide. What are they called? Do you not think it's odd that they are called organs? What do we have inside our body? Oh, organs. Nothing to see here. Next slide. Again, this is a quote-unquote church organ. Now, if you look, you've got the 4 keyboards and the 6 pedals, and look at all the buttons. Each one of those buttons will create a different sound or a different frequency when the keyboard is played.
That's a bit like a great big rife machine.
It's yeah. You know, when you combine these with the cymatic windows, I don't think there's any doubt at all that these were healing centers. You got to remember, this was long before pharmaceuticals and so on and so forth. All that came along. So when you got ill, you went to one, or when you weren't feeling very well, you went to one of these places, and they just they healed you with frequency. They healed you with sound. You know, and the next slide, it's clear again. It's sarcastic, you know, for church music? Question mark. Look at the size of the
size of that.
Look at the size of the guy playing it. You know what I mean? And we're told that these are just for church music. If you look at the left-hand side, you can clearly see those pipes, those tubes, and you can see the slits in them. You know, just like some kind of.
They had to make those as well.
Sorry?
They made them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all these things had to be physically made, physically fashioned, physically created, and then all put together as one huge musical instrument. I mean, it's just off the charts that we're expected to believe that these were just for singing hymns. It's incredible. The next one shows, or the next couple of slides, we're looking at the windows, these cymatic windows. Now, if you look on, you can find plenty on YouTube. Just type in cymatics. Look at Dr. Emoto, a Japanese guy who worked on that with ice crystals and water crystals and so on and so forth. And the work that these people have done is just off the charts. So essentially, this what you're looking at here, this cymatic window, resonates with the frequency, and the frequency that this cymatic pattern resonates with, when you actually play that frequency, if you had some sand or some I forget what they use, salt crystals or something, they would actually form the exact same pattern that you're looking at in the window. So the pattern creates the frequency creates the pattern. That's why all these cymatic windows are kind of different from building to building or church to church, and why, if you go back 1, 2 slides again to the 4 keyboards and all those yellow, red, and white buttons or levers that surround the keyboard. Each one of those would create a different frequency. On to the next one.
50. We're number 50 now, yeah?
Slide 50 we're on. Yeah, we've got about 4 more to go. So again, you can see in this particular window, you've got 2 different cymatic patterns sitting in like an archway. That's how you spell cymatics, by the way, if anybody wants to do a little bit of a search and do a bit of research on it. It's absolutely fascinating. But this is what all these buildings were for, and this is how ailments, I don't want to say illnesses, but ailments were cured.
Well, don't forget, I've just shown you a video, haven't I, with Stan, showing that cathedrals and things were looking at the stars and the sky.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all related. It's all related. This realm, this world is just nothing like we've been taught it is. Nothing. Especially now. Okay, so let's just move on to the next.
51,
yeah, that's the last picture. So the connection that we've been making is between the architecture, the mud flood, large people or tall people, orphans, the huge number of orphanages. We've also got photos of towns that are black and white, but no people, and official history that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So the next slide, the challenge, how to relate 2 completely different civilizations to biblical and other stories of creation and flood destruction. Well, I think we've already done that, Karen. I think we did that in our last couple of podcasts. 53, our true history hasn't been hidden from us. It's been stolen from us. And before you and I started this hangout, we were talking about this. We were talking about it the other day as well. It hasn't been hidden from us. It's been stolen. There's plenty of evidence out there, for serious researchers to go out and have a look and put the pieces together. I mean, people like Martin Leaker, people like John Levi, and many, many others, including Karen, including myself, we're all looking at the same thing, but maybe from slightly different perspectives or slightly different quote unquote rabbit holes. But we all agree that history hasn't been hidden, it's been stolen. And we have the right to take it back. I firmly believe that we have the right to take it back, and that's what a lot of us are trying to do, is to take it back and show people what our true history is. And the last slide is kind of just what I've said. No one can research everything. There are many people doing research into many different topics. No one can research everything. We don't have time. But by coming together, and some of us joining the dots using information provided by various researchers, it's my belief that we can eventually find the answers that we seek. And I truly believe that. In fact, I know that. I don't use the word belief anymore, but I truly know that. I understand that. A lot of what I've done over the years and what I've written about in my books is, if you've gone and done 30 years of research on one particular topic, and somebody else has done 30 years of research on another particular topic, and so on and so forth, then, people like us, we can look at that research and see what dots we can join. And, well, hang on, that fits with that, and that fits with that. It's like people on the channel have said, well, wow, that's kind of joined so many dots that, or so many missing puzzle pieces. That's how I see us rolling forward. What do you think?
Well, nearly every day, somebody or some of us just keep coming across other things which just show us that the history is not what they say it is. For years you're walking around and you just believe what you're told, and then now you don't. You think, look at the side of that. How can that be like that? You've got too many questions now.
we're not taught to question anything. We're taught just to shut up and listen. You know, even at school, you can't. The teachers don't like you questioning anything that they say. You just got to sit there and swallow it. And for the most part, that's what we do, and that's what we've done over the years. And now we're getting to the time in our lives that we're kind of waking up and realizing that everything that we've ever been taught is a deception or a lie. Everything, all of it. And as I said, our history has not been hidden from us. It's been stolen from us, literally stolen from us. And we've got to take it back, because that's our history. That's where we came from. That's our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents. That's their history. And it's all been taken away from us. We're just told to believe, shut up and do as you're told. It's nonsense, all of it.
So I'm just going to stop for a moment, Nigel. 1 second. Right, well, we're back on Hangout now, because we've just been looking at that document that Nigel did. Nigel, should we play your Zeppelin video of your channel? Because obviously I put one out yesterday about Zeppelins.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think you need to play all of it, but you could play a snippet of it and then put the link in the description if you want. But it's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Credit to Spacebusters for this one. I put it on my other channel before it got removed, not the video, before the channel got taken down. Yeah, I've managed to put it back up on my new channel today. So yeah, I think it's very, very fitting, a very fitting finale to this podcast.
Okay, I'm going to just stop our Hangout to do that.
Researchers such as John Levi, Martin Leitke and others have repeatedly pointed out that almost all of the photographs from the 1800s seem to have the sky purposely doctored to blur it out. Notice how you can never see any clouds, distant hills or land on the horizon, the sun even, and on some of them you can even see the sloppy pixelated cuts around the buildings. Are they purposely hiding something? And if so, what and why? We have also noticed that churches and older structures around Scandinavia, and the rest of the world for that matter, all have large open belfries, but with no bells in them. They also seem to have human-sized arches and platforms, much like old skyscrapers and towers such as the Empire State Building and the Eiffel Tower. They have them very near the top. Is it possible both questions have the same simple answer? As always, the topics we touch on in our videos are our own musings and should be taken as such. Do your own research and come to your own conclusions. There was obviously something in the skies that they didn't want us to see. Were there commonplace atmospheric anomalies that would seem strange to us today? Were there literally no clouds or sun? Were there flying rainbow unicorns? Probably not. But what if the skies were full of airships? This might sound absurd at first, but consider this. All of the old world maps made by the early to late 1500 cartographers are in perfect proportions with modern maps that are allegedly done by aerial photography and satellite imagery. They even have major and minor rivers mapped out in dense, impenetrable jungle and forest regions. They even have coastlines and areas mapped out in places we had allegedly never even discovered, or explored at that time. The only way this could be done is from the air. You would need a craft that can go slow enough to map out the terrain, fly high enough for area perspective, and low enough to see details. You would also need a whole fleet of these to map out the whole world. But where would you keep or moor them in the 1500s? One possible answer lies in the larger antique buildings and churches here in Copenhagen, and actually in other cities on every continent around the world. If you're new to Tatarian mudflood research, there is mounting evidence that most of these old buildings are much, much older than the late 17 or 1800s, as is claimed by lamestream history, possibly hundreds of years older. As you can see from these images, all of these older buildings and churches have basically the same mechanical structures on their roofs, albeit in many differing designs. The aerial, the ball, the 360-degree openings, or sometimes the fenced-off landing platforms. We call these towers belfries, yet strangely, most of them have no bells, or even the mechanical framework to hang them on. Why would this design of towers be universal across the country, and as you will see later on, also across the world? Did these people have bats in their belfries? Or did they have blimps on their belfries? The largest and most important buildings in these cities seem to have the most mooring points on them, for various size airships, and would be obvious recognizable landmarks for inbound pilots. We can imagine several different scenarios. Larger airships with many passengers and large cargo would unload on the ground, and then pilots and crew would moor the ship on the tower and disembark via a gangplank into the human-sized openings in these towers. Another scenario would be the bus stop analogy, where certain passengers would disembark down a gangplank through the tower and the airship could move on quickly to the next destination. If we look at these towers, there is always a large antenna with a ball, perfect for mooring and keeping the ship tethered. As no one can predict the direction of the wind, it would make sense to have multiple openings 360 degrees around the tower, as they all do. Most of these towers have a smaller top belfry with windows too small to walk through, but perfect for a landing technician for sighting and mooring. If this theory is correct, then we can also see that it wasn't just the largest and most important buildings that had this technology, but private residences also had mooring points for smaller airships on their roofs. There is a theory that these buildings doubled as atmospheric energy harvesters, and for all we know, they were also recharging these airships while moored, and that this free energy technology may be part of the reason they could be hiding the existence of these once commonplace airships. Which brings us to structures such as the Eiffel Tower, the Blackpool Tower, and the thousands of other towers around the world, also with platforms, mooring architecture, and possible atmospheric harvesting technology. Could this be what they were really built for? As John Levi points out, most of our train stations seem to have pointless high hangar-shaped roofs and open halls, unless in fact that's exactly what they were: airship hangars and airports with connecting hubs to trains. If you Google Tesla today, you'll get Elon Musk and his energy and resource guzzling electric cars, and very little on the electrical genius who was Nikola Tesla, as if he is being deliberately deleted from history. Airships used to be called Zephyrs, and just like today, the Rockefeller, Ford, Vanderbilt, oil, steel and railroad barons started naming cars and trains Zephyr, just as petroleum-based ground travel started replacing air travel. This amazing green, clean, quiet mode of travel was obviously not profitable to the oil barons and needed to go. These airships were actually still quite commonplace even in the early 1900s, as we can see here. As we know, alcohol prohibition was really about removing natural plant-based fuels like ethanol, so that the automotive industry had to rely on profitable big oil for fuel. But how would you eliminate your biggest competitors that can fly without the use of petroleum-based fuel? By scaring the shit out of everyone to ever set foot on one of these airships again. False flag, anyone? That crash single-handedly ended the passenger airship industry. How convenient. Getting back to the 1800s and the blanked-out sky photographs, there is a very curious anomaly when we watch the alleged footage of the Wright brothers' first flight in 1903. You would think that if you were watching the first ever manned airplane flight, still thought to be impossible at the time and the greatest achievement in history, you would be watching intently with a look of wonderment on your face, not wanting to miss a single second. But like the Zapruder film also shows people looking uninterested in any direction but the most popular president in history's motorcade, the Wright brothers spectators seem to be equally disinterested and unenamored. Hey Bob, let's go grab some lunch while these guys try to get that wooden contraption off the ground. While there is a theory out there that says that entire flight was faked Hollywood-style production using models, another explanation could be that it was actually commonplace to see flying machines in the sky, and therefore no big deal to see a several hundred-foot low-altitude flight. Musings or not, the evidence seems to point in this direction. Were we flying across the Atlantic in the 14 or 1500s, as the old maps seem to suggest? Why did they blur out the skies in the 1800s? Why are there no bells in the so-called belfries? And how the hell did they get that up there, if not by air?
Amazing video, that one. Probably quite true, because Angel, who's into pyramids, more the South American ones, there are platforms there as if people were turning up all the time from the air, like an airport. They're like airports with platforms. So that would make sense. And, you know, balloons and and Zeppelins, they're quite similar sort of things. In the olden days, they made like mini Zeppelins, but they were hot air balloons. It's all a bit crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean that evidence is just all over the world, and it kind of answers a lot of questions. You remember, you know, you've done lots of videos on maps, on how these they came up with these maps, how they drew these maps back in the, you know, 14, 15, 1600s. Well, there's your answer, in my opinion. I think they were all drawn using airships rather than, you know, sailing ships.
We're a lot more futuristic, but it's not that futuristic. It's very futuristic, but it isn't at the same time, because it's so old looking compared to what we have now, even if we haven't really moved along that much.
Well, I think the technology back then was way advanced compared to what we're actually allowed to get now. You know, you were doing some work on these actors and that, and deep fakes and stuff, and people, or we've been taught, or we've been told that deep fakes have just been around for the last couple of years or so. But you know, you trace them back to the 1930s, Karen, didn't you?
Yeah, I showed you that channel, didn't I?
Mm.
Jeff, whatever his name is. I mean, you know, Fred Astaire is Bing Crosby, is Hitler. He had 15 roles.
Insane.
And who did we see? The one that gets you is the one at the beginning when it's Cher's husband. What's his name? Bonner. No, what's his name?
Sonny Bono.
Yeah, it is Sylvester Stallone. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
God.
And Cher is.
It boggles your mind, doesn't it? You just think, what?
Yeah, and he showed that Cher is. Celine Dion.
Yeah.
Same person. You know, we've already done the Patricia Steere, Eric Dubay thing. They're the same person. It's insane, guys. What they have done to us is just, it's so mind-boggling that you know, a lot of people just, they still can't get it. Even those who are consider themselves to be quote unquote awake. This is just off the charts, and it is so deep and so horrible and so deceptive. That sometimes I can't put it into words. It defies words.
Yeah, because we are not those kind of people, so it defies words for that reason, because we wouldn't be doing that.
Well, that is half the problem with trying to quote unquote get people to wake up, because you know, when we see what has been done to us, one of the reasons we find it so hard to believe is because people like us would never do that. We wouldn't even dream of doing it. So because we wouldn't dream of doing it,
we want the truth now. And you know, like I told you, after doing all that stuff about the Queen, that what are we in? Coronavirus, which is the crown.
Yeah.
Crown, which is the Queen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything is so mixed, so deeply, and if people don't think and do their own homework, they just don't get it.
Well, I think a lot of people don't want to
accept it.
I think a lot of people don't want it. They can't get their head around how convoluted everything is. And convoluted is probably a pretty good word to use because it's all mixed up. It's like having a bowl of spaghetti and me telling you, right, you got 3 seconds to find the end. I mean, you just can't, because it's all mixed together, and it's all one great big deception, all of it.
What about that video I did where Giuliani is got Trump superimposed on him?
Yeah, yeah. Again, you know,
the mayor. Sorry, what is he? He's the governor of New York. Got an award, an Emory, which is for acting.
Oh, that was Cuomo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, gets an Emmy award for his performances with respect to the Lyris. I mean, you can't make this up. I mean, how much more proof do people need to understand that it's all a lie, it's all a con, it's all a deception, and people just can't get their head around it, or they don't want to get their head around it, you know? And as I say, they because people like you and I wouldn't do this kind of thing to fellow human beings, we find it really, really difficult to accept the fact that other human beings would do it to us. That's the hardest part to get your head around.
Well, we're still left with question marks. Is there anything else you want to say? Because we've kind of done everything and probably hopefully made people think, or maybe some people have got more answers or ideas.
Well, you know, more and more, the way I look at what how I'm trying to present my stuff now over on my channel is there does appear to be more and more people waking up to realise that the Lyris is the Lyris, and for a lot of people it's a bit of a shock. They can't understand that everything's a lie. And when these people first wake up, I mean, we've all been there. You know, we can't really handle some of the deep stuff. So what I'm trying to do now both with you and on my own channel, is to put out some stuff that is easy for the newly awakened to have a look at and go, well, okay, didn't know that. Well, and maybe just encourage the newly awakened people to go out there and do a bit of their own research. Because this is something that everybody in this community has got to do together, and we've all got to chip in, and we've all got to throw our hat in the ring and go, look, this is what I've got, what have you got? And, if we can join some dots and we can help a few more people join a few more dots, then great. So that's what this podcast has been all about, basically.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time. A lot more question marks maybe for people, but thank you for that, Nigel.
You're more than welcome. Anytime, you know that.
Mwah, mwah, mwah. There you go.
Mwah, mwah, mwah.
Anyway, chat room. Mwah. Anyway, thanks, Nigel.
You're welcome.